There is no altcoin season. There will be no altcoin season. It's all over. That's all finished. That's all go home, right? The Ethereum is going home. It's going home, don't you know? Right? Some very pessimistic, some very bearish views out there. Also, people saying double top in Bitcoin. And even if Bitcoin, my view is that Bitcoin is going to go for another leg up. A double top can happen 109, 110K, but that's not the majority of the probability. My estimation, the bigger probability is that we get another leg up, right? And basically, if that happens, then usually you get that altcoin season. There's some evidence that altcoin season is around the corner or already about to start, right? I'm going to share with you guys today what evidence I'm looking at. So, first of all, I'm against all that pessimism saying that that there will be a double top. I want to make it clear that could happen, but I lean towards the view that we're going to go for another leg up. 70% probability, maybe even 80% in my estimation. I'll show you guys the evidence why. And usually what happens is, as I've been telling folks, if we get a bounce up in another leg up in Bitcoin, usually it's the second leg up above all-time high that creates the altcoin season. So the all-time high of last bull run was 69K in 2021. We have the first leg up that hit 109K, right? That happened in December of January of this year. And now we're about to, in my estimation, have a second leg up. When that happens, basically, that's when altcoin season comes. But it's not up to us, it's up to the Federal Reserve. Usually altcoin season happens when the Fed ends QT. I'll show you guys historical evidence of how and why that happens. So for example, let's have a look at the Bitcoin chart right now. Basically, Bitcoin can do, there are various ways we can look at this Bitcoin chart, and this is on a log scale, by the way. Some folks say we hit a double top here and we go down. And there's some evidence, ignore this red line. This red line is drawn for natural scale. I'll show you guys what that looks like. So on a regular scale, this is what that red line looks like. This is what helped me call 109K top, right? I said this is going to be a big resistance to run into, and we hit 70. I called for 73, hit 74, and now if we were to go bounce up again, 112K. So that could be a double top, right? There is like a 20-30% chance we get that. But if we were to look at the log scale, so that red line doesn't work because it was drawn for natural scale. If we were to look at the log scale, we've had 2 pivot bottoms and 2 pivot tops here. If we were to link that up, that's actually a very nice channel. I don't see many people or anyone talking about this, but that's actually a nice channel in Bitcoin, right? 2 bottoms, 2 tops, that's enough. Now, if it was to break out and hit here around, say June, July, August, then we're looking at something like 150K, 160K is possible, right? Next leg up. Now, in order for that to happen, we need help, of course, from the Federal Reserve. That would make it helpful. And will we finally get the altcoin season that we've all been asking about? And what is altcoin season? Okay, before we answer all those questions, first let's answer the question of which crypto exchange does PabloHuman use? Well, Pablo uses this exchange that is non-KYC. That means you don't need to show any ID. That means the exchange can't even see who you are, right? The IRS can't see you. The tax office can't see you. FBI, CIA, nobody can see who you are. So I made this deal with them on the PabloHuman link. Just by depositing, receive up to $200, right? Trade and win up to $35,000, right? Up to limited time only, ending on June 4th. Chance to win a Tesla Model 3, Rolex, Apple Vision Pro, Sony, just by trading, folks, right? Okay, now, if you're watching on YouTube, then the link is in the description below. But if you're watching on another platform, such as this one, then basically just click and go to my profile page, and it should be in this stand link right here. Basically, it should be the first deal that pops up. Okay, let's get back to the markets because this is a great deal. Okay, get back into the markets, and remember, folks, only on the PabloHuman link. So, in the past, we've only seen altcoin seasons under certain conditions. So, to define an altcoin season, well, the way they define it, the way some of these folks define it, is that altcoin season happens basically when you have a big drop in Bitcoin dominance, right? That's the way these folks would define it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I say it does make sense. So for example, here this blue line is the total assets of the Federal Reserve, meaning if they've been buying bonds or not. Meaning if they do QE, that's when they're going up, or they do QT, that's when it goes down. Okay, let me just lift this a little bit higher so folks can see it better. So you can see that when the QE and QT is happening. So now we can see it. So here, this massive drop in Bitcoin dominance, that was the Valhalla, the altcoin season of all altcoin seasons. It happened when there was no QE or QT. It was basically, say QT started here in 2018, and this for 2 years was basically the Fed just on, that was the QE to save the markets, to save America and the rest of the world from 2009 GFC, and then nothing happened. There was no QE and there was no QT. It just went flat. And during that time, we had a massive drop in Bitcoin dominance. So big altcoin season. Then QT started. Right? QT started. So Fed started selling the bonds it holds. Then Bitcoin dominance goes up. That means no altcoin season. Then QT stops, and then obviously massive QE. So QT stops is when we had a small altcoin season, and then a massive altcoin season, and then QT starts again. This is the current bull market, right? Where we're living this right now, and that is basically when Bitcoin dominance starts again. This is mid-20, from memory, April 2022. QT starts and Bitcoin dominance goes up, right? Now, what we would like is for QT to stop, like here. So then Bitcoin dominance starts to drop. Not a massive drop. For that you need to have QE, but just for Bitcoin dominance to start dropping on something like this, right? We need QT to stop. Or see here, QT stops. There's no QT, no QE, and Bitcoin still had, a massive drop in dominance. So you could even argue to say we don't need QE for this sort of big run in altcoin season. We just need QT to stop. And I've spoken a number of times about why QT can stop, and because right now the federal, you just have to take a look. Look at this, the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield. Look how ridiculous it is right now. Basically, look at this, U.S. 10-year Treasury yield. Okay, here we go. The reason why is because, let's not put it on a regular chart. Auto fit. So usually what happens is when the Fed is cutting interest rates, this 10-year Treasury yield is meant to come down. And recently we see it keep on spiking. It had this big run during the trade war to 4.6%, and then this big spike again to 4.55%. And that just means when yield goes up, that just means the bond prices are coming down. Someone's selling bonds, not a lot of buyers, so yields keep on spiking up, and the Federal Reserve needs to come in and stop selling their bonds. That's essentially the end of QT. I'll say that again for folks who are not familiar. You notice how Trump is talking a lot about the interest rates dropping. He means the bond yields. He means like the 10-year, 20-year bond yields are dropping. And that happens when bond prices go up, yields go down. Right now, the opposite is happening. Bond prices coming down, yields going up. And that's bad for U.S. businesses and U.S. Folks who want to buy property. Mortgage rates go up. So Trump wants that yield to go down, meaning bond prices to go up. But how can bond prices go up if the Federal Reserve is still selling, and China's selling, and Japan's selling, and EU to some extent, sometimes they're selling as well. Not as much buyers as they would like. So that means that's a very bad situation that forces the Fed going to consider to stop QT sometime in the next couple of months. The Federal Reserve already cut their QT. It used to be something like 95 billion. They cut it down to 65 billion. Now they cut it down to 40 billion from memory. 40 or 35 billion. They could cut that right down to 5 billion or even back to zero if they have an emergency situation. So that could always happen. You always got to think ahead of the market. Remember how people were like thinking this trade war is going to crash everything, and I kept on saying, no, Trump's going to cave. Based on evidence that I've seen, Trump is going to cave and then he's going to reach a deal with China. Tariff rates are going to come down a lot. And the market bottomed on April 7th. We didn't get a deal till May the 9th, till a month later. So the market saw what was coming a month before the deal was signed. Like I said, Trump's going to cave, we're going to get a deal by about like 14th of April. I was like 7 weeks after it bottomed. And then they still didn't sign a deal until May the 14th. So right now, what if I say QT is going to end in the next couple of months? You may not see it end, right, until 2 months from now. But the market is not going to wait. Market figures out these things ahead of us. So another thing we're going to look at is, for example, will Ethereum bottom against Bitcoin? So a lot of times people look at this ratio, which is ETH versus Bitcoin, and another way to say whether we're getting an altcoin season or not is to see if ETH has bottomed and bouncing up. Now here was the last bottom like 5-6 years ago, and basically ETH had this massive run, and since then Bitcoin has been dominating ETH, and now we're wondering if ETH is going to be bouncing up again. If ETH bounces up, then basically everything goes up. Then basically we have a massive altcoin season. One way, we've spoken about QE already, but another way of looking at this is actually to look at the supply and demand, of ETH and Bitcoin. So what is this? This is basically, let me just move the chart a little so folks can see it better. This is basically the exchange inflow of Ethereum and Bitcoin. Exchange inflow of Ethereum, Bitcoin. In other words, how much Ethereum is flowing onto the exchange and how much Bitcoin is flowing onto the exchange. Well, there's only one reason they would flow onto the exchange, out of some whale's cold wallet. It flows onto the exchange so they would go and sell it. So now this black line is basically the ETH Bitcoin price ratio, what I showed you guys on the TradingView chart just now. What is this blue line? This blue line is basically the ratio of Ethereum versus Bitcoin flowing onto the exchange. Now, so for example, up here was higher selling pressure for ETH, as inflows of ETH onto the exchange are higher relative to Bitcoin. So we're speaking relative terms. So I'm sure that they're not measuring by absolute amounts of ETH. They're probably saying what's the percentage of ETH divided by the percentage of ETH compared to total ETH supply flowing onto the exchange. Say, for example, 10% or 20% of all ETH supply are flowing from whale wallets onto the exchange, compared to only 10% of all Bitcoin supply flowing onto the exchange. Then, of course, much more selling pressure for ETH. That's what we're seeing here, here, and here. And this was in the year. Let me pull it up so folks can see the dates better. Okay, that was in the year around end of 22 to 24. It was always much more high selling pressure for ETH, and then it drops past the new neutral zone, and now we've just tagged this zone where it says lower selling pressure. That was high selling pressure for ETH. Now it's lower selling pressure for ETH, as inflows of ETH to exchanges are low relative to Bitcoin. So basically now whales are sending more Bitcoin to exchanges to sell compared to ETH, right? We've just seen last time, like look at the last couple of times we tagged this area. When we tagged this area, boom, right? Bitcoin, ETH Bitcoin ratio went for a big bounce. Well, it came close here. They didn't actually get there, but ETH Bitcoin ratio went for a big bounce. And this was obviously 2019, 2020 when we came into this zone again, and ETH Bitcoin ratio bottom and went for a big bounce. This time we're tagging this zone again, and ETH Bitcoin ratio looks like it's heading for another bounce. So my thinking is we should get a pretty big bounce here, right? Pretty big bounce here. And whether we see Bitcoin dominance come down or not, I mean, hopefully we see Bitcoin dominance come down and fall down a lot. But whether it comes down or not, if we get a massive bounce in ETH versus Bitcoin ratio, that means a lot of the altcoins are going to follow. That means a lot of the layer one's going to follow. A lot of the decentralized exchange is going to follow. That means it's going to be an altcoin season. Even if we don't have a massive drop in Bitcoin dominance, it'd be great if we get a massive drop in Bitcoin dominance. But hey, I just want to ask you guys this at the end of the day. If you see total altcoins market cap go from like 400 billion to say 3 trillion, which is like a 7.5x move, right? Right now we're at 1.5 trillion. It can 2x from here. That's a 7.5x move in total altcoin market cap. You can, I mean, if you missed out on that and you say, oh, there was no altcoin season, then that's pretty bad for you. That to miss out on that kind of move in altcoin season, in altcoins, a 7.5x, 8x move in altcoin total market cap, that's pretty bad. Even if you want to use technical terms like, oh, that was altcoin season, where that wasn't altcoin season. Anyways, folks, I'll do more on this in my next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you next time.